So again, welcome to this webinar on Mosaic Diversity Activity. We're going to go through this today, taking probably about 45 minutes to an hour at the most. So the first thing I'm going to cover is what is Mosaic, for those of you who may not have come across the activity at all. Where did it come from, what is its kind of design origins, and how does it work? Then we're going to take a little look at what learning you might use it for. Hopefully by the time we get to this point, you've already got some ideas. And then maybe a bit unusually, what else might we develop using the technology behind Mosaic? And I'll explain what I mean about that as we go on. And of course, we'll have some time for questions at the end. But as I said, if you've got a question as we go through, just fire it in to Laura, or indeed send it to all, and we'll pick this up. If it's important, we can stop what we're doing or move forward. So hopefully everything is working in terms of technology. You're seeing these slides move forward. So a little bit on Mosaic background. Like most RSVP activities, we like to start with what is the business issue or the problem that we're looking at for this product. And one of the things we felt for a while is that this idea of modern business roles really requiring people at all levels to be able to view situations, problems, opportunities, negotiations, a wide variety of issues from different perspectives. So we often hear of, yes, if you could step into this person's shoes, or yes, if we could see this from a customer's point of view, a whole range and raft of reasons why you might want to be able to take a different viewpoint. And we worked with Inc. Based in California for a number of years. In fact, they are now part of the RSVP design product family. And they had developed a technology they called Viewpoint. And what Viewpoint was able to do is use polarized eyewear, much like 3D glasses, to decode a message from a screen. And again, I'll explain what that means as we go forward. And the key for us was, the learning focus. Could we make this technology help to make people really feel what it was like to accept and work with another's viewpoint that they couldn't actually see? So yes, intellectually we may understand this idea of taking another viewpoint, but what does it really feel like when you are forced to do that and you can't actually see what the other person does? So this emotional context was really important. It's really important in any kind of experiential learning, because we feel that's what would really deepen the understanding and the learning. So a bit more about what it is, and we worked probably for the last couple of years, to be fair, with the materials, some early prototypes. Interel did offer a version called Mosaic early on, and some alternative approaches, and we'll talk again, as I said, about that later, to focus on this Mosaic Diversity Activity as the initial product that uses the Viewpoint technology. So in terms of this Mosaic Diversity Activity product, it's a team-based activity designed for groups of probably up to about 20 people, any more than that, and it's not really practical for using the Viewpoint screen, which I'll show you shortly. And we've subdivided those groups into four, and I reckon probably a maximum of 5 per sub-team is probably right as well. These need not be competitive teams, they need not be non-collaborative, but it's easier just in terms of the organisation if you've got up to 20 people to put them in 4 sub-teams. It's not an activity you could do on your own, so you would need at least 2 people to be able to do it. And if you've got 6 or 7, then again, no problem in setting up maybe just a couple of sub-teams. And the way it progresses is that we ask these subgroups to work in silence for the first 5 minutes. Okay, and then another 15 minutes or so a total activity time of 20 minutes. And during that 20 minutes, what the team members really have to learn how to do, because it's often not obvious at the start, is to cope with these alternative points of view that each team member brings to the proposed group solution. So we are looking for one group solution from each sub-team. And I say that the group member brings, and whether they do actually bring their point of view is an interesting thing when it comes to part of the review. So how does Mosaic work? And one of the things I always say when describing our activity is, if you're going to facilitate or use a new activity, by far the best way to understand it as a facilitator is to first experience it as a participant. And although I do spend a lot of time, and my colleagues spend a lot of time going around the world, we can't show everybody every activity. So the idea of these webinars is to try to give you a taste of how it might feel if we were running it live. Obviously, we have some limitations, particularly when you're talking about a visual product, but we'll have a go. So the first thing is, once you've got the group settled, is to give them this description. And the description is that we're going to do a group activity that involves you trying to decode a pattern on a white background that's partially hidden behind a black checkerboard grid. Okay, so that's quite a difficult sentence to understand, and you can see me in the bottom right explaining what I mean. And again, the participants, as is most of our activities, will have a one-page written brief. The second piece of information is, and I usually ham this up quite a bit, is that we've made this investment in some extremely high-tech eyewear, and it's very sensitive what you're going to look at, and you need to protect your eyes at all times. So I want you to put on your eyeglasses now before we actually start this activity, and keep them on for the duration of the activity so you don't accidentally take them off and maybe damage your eyes. Of course, there's nothing like that involved, but it encourages people to keep them on, get used to them, and then hopefully more or less just forget about them. And here's how we explain what we're going to do as a bit of kind of conditioning or pre-brief setup. So if you look at this diagram, you'll see on the left in the middle there a red square. So that is what we talk about as being the coloured shape in a white background. So if you imagine the checkerboard above it there, if you imagine that that checkerboard has opaque black squares, so if I put that over that red square, you wouldn't be able to see what was behind the black square. So going down to the bottom left, if I put that black checkerboard over that red square, that's what you would see, okay? And what we're going to ask you to, as a group, to do is, I'm going to show you that kind of image. So if you switch to the bottom right there, you can see a black checkerboard grid over a blue shape. If you were to try and decipher what that shape might be behind that black checkerboard, you might come up with something like a blue circle. And in fact, if you go up, yes, if you put a blue circle behind those black checkerboards, that's what you would see, okay? So that's me telling you you're going to see something like an image that maybe be on the bottom left or bottom right. You go back to your table. I'm going to give you some resources, which will be squares, like mosaic squares. You'll be able to try and recreate the coloured shape that is hidden on the white background. Okay. Now, can I just check, is everyone clear from that instruction if you were being briefed as a group what you were going to do? Okay, just stick a quick message into chat if that explanation that I've given you makes some sense. Okay, good. Now I know that some people in the call, English isn't their first language, so the fact that I speak a strange format of it makes me very happy that someone understood what I was saying. So thanks, Christine. Okay, let's move on. So what we do then is ask each group, as I say, maybe typically a maximum of 5 a group, to come up individually with their glasses on and look at the image, typically for 5 seconds. So you can see me holding the flap up on the image. When they're ready, hold it up, and I hold it up just for 5 seconds, give them a quick look, and then they go back and they come up one at a time. So I'm holding it kind of eye level straight in front of them. So imagine this is what they see. So you've come up, you've got your glasses on, you've had a look, and your 5 seconds is up, okay? So that very quick image, what you're now going to do, or imagine you're going to do, is go back to your table and use the resources you have got to try and work out what do you think that image was behind the black checkerboard screen, okay? So what do you do with these tiles? Because when you open that velour bag and spread out the tiles in front of you, you will see a collection of red and blue tiles. The brief would say that you must use all of them. And if you counted them at this point, you would find there are 42 tiles, 21 red, 21 blue, okay? So what do you do with them? Okay, so imagine remember we're working in silence for this first 5 minutes. So you're going back individually in your head. Just drop a quick chat to me. Having seen the image that I briefly showed you for 5 seconds, how would you be starting to arrange these red and blue mosaic tiles? Just pop in something to me. Okay, so someone's saying a blue kind of L shape, as we would say in Roman. So maybe a short vertical line and a longer horizontal line with blue. Okay, no mention of what we're going to do with the red at this point, but that's fine. Okay. And as I say, you can come back up and take another 5-second look at any time. So a couple of people haven't responded yet. Maybe they're thinking, well, I'm now really confused. That's not abnormal in many RSVP activities. So you've now seen the resources, you're working in silence, you haven't had a chance to chat with your colleagues, but I'll give you another 5 seconds to have a look at it. So start to note, now you know what you're working with in terms of tiles. Here's your image. Can you recreate what you think is behind that black checkerboard? Okay, it's gone again. Everyone in your group has had a chance. So does that alter anything? Again, type me something in the chat box that says, what would you do with all 42 tiles now having seen that again? Give me some ideas. Okay, so we're going to look at counting exactly how many squares, try and match them to the tiles that we've got. Okay. Not surprisingly, Steve is saying, I still don't know what I do with the red tiles. Yeah. Christine's saying, yep, I also still kind of see a blue L shape, no difference in the second look. Yep. And no matter how many times you come up, Christine, or indeed Steve, you will see the same thing. Okay. So we've got a problem here. You know, we've got something we're looking at. We've been giving some resources. We're told we have to use any of them. Now we have to use some kind of critical thinking or other sort of problem solving capabilities. And this is typically what you would see people do. So you can see the guy here with the glasses who's a participant, the lady in the background with no glasses on is just an observer. This was actually a train-the-trainer session. And you can see he's using those blue tiles, much as you have said, to try and map out that kind of shape. And I'm guessing he's pretty close at this point to what we saw. And after 5 minutes, we've been working in silence. We can now chat with each other. So that kind of artificial first 5 minutes of almost working, on your own is now removed. People can start to talk. So now that we can talk, what if I suddenly tell you that I don't see any blue tiles? So you've told me you're looking to build a blue L. I tell you I can't see any blue tiles. I can only see red and black tiles. Does your view of the problem you have to solve change? So imagine yourself in this situation. This is what I've told you. Give me some of your immediate reactions off the top of your head. What would you say if that's the first thing I say to you after 5 minutes? Yep, I've seen that. You can't be right. It's another way of saying you're crazy. I think you're wrong. Steve's saying, yep, maybe we're wearing different kinds of coloured glasses. Yep, that may well be something that's proposed. Okay, so you're starting to now have to deal with a new issue that you hadn't thought of before, or you certainly weren't aware of before. So you've now got a teammate clearly with a different view of the world. So let me give you kind of some of the reactions. So I'm jumping back out of being a participant here into facilitator. So here's some of the things I've seen. Some people kind of might ignore what I've said and build what they think is right. They may have pretended not to hear me, or in fact just downright ignore me and continue with their view of the world. So one option might be, well, I can't see what's behind the black. Maybe red could be behind the black, and that's why I can't see it. Some people assume they're wrong. I did the one in Singapore last month, and there was only 3 in the group. The way it worked out, one lady had the red glasses. She simply assumed she was wrong, said nothing, and they spent the whole 20 minutes trying to build a shape without her input whatsoever. And of course, trust is a major issue. So again, you can see in this picture here, you've got a couple of observers, a couple of participants, and you can see them trying to build what each of them see without managing yet to share each other's point of view. So that's more or less how the activity has to progress there. So if I said to you now, and you believe me, so I can see this red L shape. It's made up of red and black tiles, you know. Do you have any other questions? Okay. So clearly Steve is right. I'm seeing something different. It might be the colour glasses, could be whatever it is, but I'm seeing a red L shape made up of red and black tiles. What would you be asking me now if we were working in the same team? So we're faced with the problem of putting these 42 counters together, red and blue. I'm telling you I can see a red L. You've told me you can see a blue L. What other questions might we have for each other? Okay, where do the red tiles fit into the checkerboard for you? Good, yep. Good point, Christine. Probably ask if anyone is colourblind. I think statistically about a third of men are. I'm probably one of them, but I can see these two colours, but it is a good point. And certainly when you're dealing with this type of activity, it's worth asking. So if I was able to show you, and of course I can show you, but if I could recreate it, that's what I'm seeing. Okay. And of course, Steve is right. It's to do with the glasses, and we'll explain that in a second. But that's what I see. So, having now seen what I've seen, what is the shape do you think behind the black checkerboard screen? Just kind of, I know it's difficult in words, but give me a kind of quick description on the chat box of what you think it might look like. Okay, so Laura is saying, Steve's still not sure. Absolutely. Yep. So Christine, it's a square with two colours, one L-shaped blue and one L-shaped red. Steve's saying it's a rectangle. Okay, Laura's saying it's a U-shape. So one of the things that you may not have noticed, because we don't have much time, is the L's are the other way around. So the blue one goes, as you would read an L, mine is like a mirror image, so it goes, the horizontal line actually comes out to the left. So if those two overlapped, it probably would be more of a U shape. But clearly, as you can see, it requires more than just going and looking. This is where we need some extra communication between the group members and a bit of deductive reasoning to move it forward. So here is one approach that we could take, and this is one that I've seen. So if you try to recreate only what you see, so if you go back to that, if you like, conditioning I gave on that first item, the blue light box, the simplest image behind that would be an assumed blue L shape you can see in the bottom left, and mine would be an assumed L shape. If you try just to overlap those two and use the counters, you won't be able to make a shape that's consistent with those two. Okay, so if you only recreate what each other sees without taking any notice of your partner's viewpoint, then you can't solve this problem. And that's the fundamental bit, I guess, behind this activity. Another approach is if you choose what you can't see, so you're relying on trusting your other individuals, but it fits with the number of tiles you have and what the others do see, then you can make something like this. So in fact, the correct mosaic is shown there at the bottom. So the required shape is solid at the top and has the holes in it, which need to be there in order to fit in the red shape if I'm talking from a blue perspective, or the blue shape if I'm talking from a red perspective. So this is a hidden pattern. If you actually came and looked at the grid, you wouldn't see that. You need both pairs of glasses, both point of views, working together, using all the resources in order to build that correct mosaic. So it's quite a tough challenge, and requires that ability to absolutely, if you like, hold your own view of reality quite lightly. And again, we would debrief the activity, showing people this kind of diagram, so showing them what each other would have seen, showing what maybe had been assumed, the required shape, and therefore how these go together to do the correct mosaic. So in some ways, a relatively simple activity in putting yourself in another person's shoes or seeing another viewpoint. So that's how the activity works. As I said, probably a maximum of 20 minutes of working to get to that point. But if you're observing lots of good stuff to be able to observe and how those two groups, those two sets of people with the two different viewpoints of glasses work together. So here's how we do it. As Steve said, yes, the glasses are different. It won't become obvious, hopefully, to most people because they look pretty identical. The only difference, and you can see them in the bottom right there, is that they have a different stamping. So one has got a date stamp with 01 and one has got a date stamp with 10. So if you're wearing only 01, you will see blue and black and white squares, and if you're seeing 10, you'll see the red ones. So that photo above you is how it looks if you don't see, if you're not wearing the glasses, which is why we encourage people to have them on at all time so they wouldn't accidentally see this. So what happens when you wear your glasses is that the colours become black. That's where the black comes from. Kind of difficult to explain remotely, but when you have the physical materials in front of you, it becomes very, very obvious. So that's a little bit about how the technology works, how the activity works, what comes with it. Well, not surprisingly, you have the viewpoint screen with the image, and you can see in the bottom right there, and it comes with the hinge so that you can easily lift the flap for 5 seconds or so. And it's quite important that you do that at head height, because if you're tilting them at an angle, or if people tilt at an angle, which is why we have a short viewing time, sometimes they can see both patterns because it works on polarization. As I mentioned, you've got 4 sets of coloured tiles in the bags that they use. They each have a set of the guides and a 1-page briefing, and also an answer sheet that they can work through at the end, because again, some people still don't kind of understand what they've been through. So it's quite important to go through that answer so that people understand it. And of course, you get the Viewpoint eyewear, 10 sets of each. Now, these are cardboard, they won't last forever. I think you can easily sanitize them with some antiseptic wipes or so on. But if you run out, again, we can supply replacement sets of eyewear. You don't need to buy a complete new activity. And of course, as all RSVP products, we've got a full facilitator guide included. And they all come, you can't see the top of that, but it's in a kind of black rucksack, so hopefully relatively easy to move around. So that's Mosaic, that's how it works. Let's turn, and hopefully you've got some ideas by now, but what kind of learning might you use it for? So if I go back to saying, well, what are the learning objectives for individuals as they go through this? This is in the manual, but individuals will explore the nature of assumptions and biases and their limiting effect through working on this practical team challenge. And hopefully you can see where that would start to manifest itself. It can be used to ask individuals to explore strategies for challenging their own thinking processes. It's very interesting even to watch that first 5 minutes of silence. The behaviour gives you a lot of clues to how people are thinking. And then, of course, to consider sensitive and positive ways of doing this in group situations. Are you colourblind? Might be another euphemism for saying, are you crazy? Are you, how can you be telling me this is what you see? Some specific objectives for the activity. This recognising individual points of view and exploring diversity of thought and insight. Certainly if you're moving into areas like creativity, then this ability to have a different type of thinking process is really important. Principles of effective team working, obviously. The creative and critical thinking skills. So as I say, it's not enough just to have the materials to look at the screen, even just to talk. You need to do more than that in order to be able to solve it. There's some things certainly in here about challenging deeply held assumptions and considering the effect of changing these. Some people have said that they never actually truly believed that people were seeing something else as they went through. They just assumed that their colleagues must be wrong, because they have such a strong view that their view of the world is correct and everyone else's is either imperfect or indeed wrong. And therefore, how to challenge others in sensitive ways will clearly come up. And in terms of how we have developed this, there are kind of 6 key learning focus areas for every product. But for Mosaic, certainly number 1 is about collaboration. This idea of diversity in its widest sense, so diversity of thought, diversity of input, diversity of team working styles, effective communication. Once that first 5 minute barrier is removed, there's lots of opportunities for communication amongst the group. This is an interesting one, I think. The same as I can't make you see what I see, the best I can do is explain to you what I see and my view of the world. That takes you quite strongly into areas of knowledge management. I can't just hand my knowledge to you, so how do we manage the transfer and movement of knowledge around this team, group, or organisation? And then finally, I guess at its simplest, it's a problem-solving activity which can and often does generate a little bit of conflict. Sometimes that can be positive. Certainly in this activity, the conflict is positive. If people don't recognise there's a conflict in what each group sees, they won't be able to come up with an answer. We're always asked about, okay, so I get how to run the activity. It's relatively simple to run, but how do I review it? Well, our advice would always be, your review area will come from why you chose to use the activity. But as in all RSVP activities, we do provide some suggestions. So this is a page from the facilitator note. So in collaboration, you may say, what effective ways are there to hold our own reality lightly, to acknowledge what we've seen without denying or discounting the perhaps radically different perception of others? So that type of review question might be more when you're talking about diversity, when you're talking about, customer response. In diversity and cultural awareness, how did the differing views experienced by the wearers of the different eyewear affect their behaviour to others in the team? I'm glad I put this up. I've spotted a typo that will be changed by the time we reproduce this manual. So yeah, lots of suggested areas for review. Briefly, in terms of what the options are, Mosaic's available on our website just now, as is the Mosaic eyewear. If you're working internationally, you will also be able to have this from the distributors we have in various parts of the world who hold the activity and who can give you some support. Laura, I'm sure, will circulate that for you. So if you don't know where to go and find out more, you can find out more. So the next bit I wanted to go into, maybe just for the last sort of 5 or 10 minutes of this, is what else might we develop using this technology? So we've been kind of, as I say, interested in Viewpoint technology for a couple of years, and the fact that it does allow us to let people view the same object but see different things. So that's kind of where we're coming from here. I guess the first obvious way is it's relatively easy to create alternative mosaic patterns. So, if you work with this pattern and want something that's a bit more challenging for other groups, that's certainly something that we could provide. Other ways, however, we've been thinking about this is what about the opportunity to incorporate different written messages? Now whether that's how people interpret the same email, or whether that's just to kind of deliberately give people two different types of messages. So this is an example of a screen. This is how it looks like without wearing either set of Viewpoint glasses. So it just looks like a jumble of letters. If you put what we call the red glasses on, then you would be able to make out some words. So some of the squares will go black and you'll see some words, but again, not enough to make a coherent sentence. And of course, if you put the blue glasses on, you'll see another set of words. If you get together, all of these letters will make the sentence that reads, people have more success when they understand and use multiple viewpoints to create solutions. Now that's something that we think that might be a nice little icebreaker for an innovation conference, for anywhere where you're looking for groups to really collaborate and to really look at how they can use other people's points of view to build more than they can do on their own. So that's one of the things that we're looking at. It doesn't exist as a formal product yet, but it's a prototype we've been playing with. Next is to look at pictures, and this idea that sometimes people get different impressions from a message than was originally intended by the receiver. So if you can, and this might be a little bit difficult on the screen here, but if you can imagine wearing your red glasses, you only see the man, you don't see anything to do with the rest of it. If you're wearing the other glasses, you might just see a picture of trees. So what is the one word you can think of that might link these two pictures? Probably an Americanism a little bit, so it's, but is there a word that you think might fit both those pictures, even though they're quite different? Just drop me a suggestion in the chat. I'm always interested to see whether this is fairly obvious to people. Not yet. That's okay, that's fine. So the word would be fall. So if I told you I'm going to show you a picture of fall, and then I showed you the man, and then I showed you someone else a picture of autumn leaves and trees. If you knew the American word for autumn was also fall, then that might be consistent. And I realise this is American. So that's one word we could, condition people about fall and maybe take it in two different directions. What about if I told you the word was hog? What would be the two pictures related to hog you might see if you were wearing either red or blue glasses? Dance, Steve, okay. Motorcycle, yeah, what's another word? Again, it's an Americanism. These were both came from our partners in the US. Another word for a motorcycle. Oh, getting there, Steve. A three-letter word. So I think this is probably meant to be a Harley Davidson, sometimes known as a hog. And of course, you would see a picture of a male pig, which would be a hog. So again, there's areas we might take the idea of looking at the same picture but having different associations with. So those are a couple of areas where we're thinking of taking the Viewpoint technology next. If that strikes any thoughts or ideas in your head, whether you're watching this right now or whether you're watching this on recording, then please do drop us a line to our sales address, either for maybe a custom product or maybe for something that you think would be useful or maybe meets another idea that we haven't thought of. We love developing products with our customers, so if you think of any other ways we could use Viewpoint technology, let me know. So that was a pretty rapid run through. I've got a few minutes left. If people have any questions, I'm happy to take them. Laura, I think, has circulated the links to the product on the website where you'll find a bit more. If you have any questions on how the product works or any other ideas we've had or any other experiences we've had, then please let me know. So I'll give us a minute or so before I close off, just in case there's any questions. Okay. Well, I'm conscious this will be recorded, so if people come up with something, we could answer it. Equally, if you're watching this on review, we would be able to do it. Just before we go, Christian's got a question. Would we be able to choose the written words? Yes. I mean, one of the things we've been working with is, what kind of messages can we put in? How do we do it? If you can imagine the way this grid works, you more or less have got a fixed number of letters. So how you would use and the word you created would be different. But for example, yes, they needn't be written in English. They could be in a different language, but there are some limitations to the numbers of windows we have and therefore the number of letters we have. But yes, if you've got ideas on a written one and some kind of text you might use, please get in touch and we can look at how we might work that together. Good. Any final questions before I thank you and close this off? No? Okay. Well, thank you very much for your time. If you have anything, please do get in touch and hopefully we'll see you again on one of our further webinars soon. Thanks a lot. Take care. Bye-bye.